Hi, I'm Randi Altman with postPerspective. We're here with David Bees from Framestore and David Frederick from NetApp. We're going to have a conversation today about workflows, trends, COVID, the whole bit. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Randi.
Thanks for having me.
David, why don't you tell us about your job and about your company, and then we could go to Dave from NetApp, and he could do the same.
Sure. So my name is David Bees. I'm the lead systems engineer at Framestore in Los Angeles. Framestore is a post-production company. We do film, television, and lots of mixed media as well, so such as rides and AR VR.
Dave?
Hi, I'm David Frederick. I'm Media Solutions Strategist for NetApp. NetApp is a data management company that has been around for about 30 years. And we have millions of deployments of storage and data management systems worldwide in all kinds of industries. But in media and entertainment, we provide some of the most comprehensive data management systems in the world for about 900 to 1,000 customers on an ongoing basis every year, and shipping hundreds of petabytes. So we're in the business of solving big data management problems.
Fantastic. Okay, let's dig in. David from Framestore, can you talk a little bit? Let's go back to March when everything shut down, and you guys, I'm assuming, had to scramble, but you might have been prepared ahead of time to set people up working from home. How did that go? And how is it going now?
I think it went very well actually. We were luckily in a situation or position where we had the majority of our systems in a piece over IP configuration. So we were able to deploy the majority of our artists out to their remote home locations with great ease. So I think we're positioned in a very sort of advantageous way, and we're still obviously proceeding with that kind of workflow.
Can you talk a little bit about what it took from a technology perspective, and are people sort of dialing into on-prem technology? Are you working in the cloud? How are you making sure that they all have enough bandwidth to get the job done?
Yeah, I mean, bandwidth is obviously a challenge. It's many variables when it comes to individual sort of connectivity at home. But we have retained the majority of our hardware and working systems on premises. We haven't migrated into the cloud when it comes to artist workstations, but we do use the cloud extensively for rendering and burst capabilities when we need them.
And the PC over IP, was that set up? Were you already using that, and you were able to then roll it out to everyone else, or was this something that you had to develop and deploy kind of on demand, on the spot?
Well, we've had PC over IP in play on premises for quite some time. So I think we probably started rolling that out in anger, over 3 to 4 years ago. And obviously the technology has been around for quite some time. So the majority of our workstations on-prem are already utilizing PC over IP, and we just had to add the additional step to get connectivity into people's homes and making sure that that connection is secure as well.
And have you had are the artists happy with the responsiveness of the solution, or do you have folks that, for example, maybe wish they could work in a higher resolution than they're able to, or forced to work on proxies? What's that story?
I think it's been, the artist response has been quite pragmatic. I think that there's like with any technology, there's going to be faults or deficiencies. I think most people were aware of that with on-prem and how we had PC over IP working there. I think they were just very glad that we were able to continue working during this, the beginning of the pandemic, really.
Yeah. So you guys have been, Framestore itself has been around as long as NetApp has, about 30 years, going back to London. Would you consider this, it sounds like it wasn't a big challenge to overcome the COVID remote working situation, but have there been other technological transitions or other issues that you've had to deal with over the history of the company that you would say is notable, and how were those dealt with, especially when it comes to storage and data management?
Well, storage has been growing exponentially over the years. I think resolutions and file sizes have just grown in anger, shall we call it? I think with the advent of obviously of virtual productions and things like that going on now, and set extensions and such, we're starting to see a lot more lat long kind of 8K 12K resolutions we have to stitch together. So that's going to only increase our storage requirements. So yeah, that's obviously just going to be our biggest challenge, I think, in the coming years, is making sure that we have enough space to facilitate the requirements.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned using cloud for burst capabilities or rendering. Are you looking at that as a solution for either long-term archives or even nearline like active archives for to be able to support having some content around for a longer period of time rather than keep it on-prem?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we're using LTO for our long-term archive process. I think that's we need to revise that. I think lots of people are moving into object storage and cloud solutions. Mm-hmm. So yeah, within hopefully within the coming years we'll be able to migrate over to something that's a lot more robust and potentially more advanced than what we are currently using.
Right. And what's your attitude towards the transition from disk to flash? Are you completely embracing flash? Or are you doing a migration as needed, or how do you approach that?
I think it's like most things, like not fully going into the cloud and doing a hybrid solution. I think we'd probably look to do the same thing with flash storage. At the moment, I guess cost can be prohibitive dependent on the application. But in a hybrid scenario, and if it's managed correctly, it as a burst capability and a caching mechanism is very useful. But yeah, we'll definitely cross that bridge when we get to it.
Cool. So I have one more question, Randy, if you don't mind. So if I could hand you a magic media data management wand and you could wave it over Framestore, what would the working environment, and in terms of how data is managed and how it moves around, what would that world look like if you could have it work exactly the way you wanted it to?
Highly accelerated and highly intelligent, I think, are the two kind of things that we need within this industry. At the moment, a lot of it is dependent on human interaction and making judgment calls. Integration within our pipeline tools, and being able to understand about the access times and everything else of files, and where they should reside and which tiers they should reside on, is going to be very important. And I think we've probably discussed this before, that just how we manage our storage is becoming more and more of an issue. And just having some intelligence built into our file systems is going to be more important to have going forward.
All right, great. Well, so thanks, David. Randy, do you have any? I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit, but when you spoke about tiering, but David, I wanted to find out, over the last few years, and especially this year, visual effects trends. I mean, what are you guys seeing? What do you expect to see in the coming year?
Definitely seeing more requirements or requests for a lot more interaction happening on sets. So that's going to be interesting to see how we interact with them. Obviously, knowing that we have security in place, which is we need to obviously make sure that we're adhering to that from a studio requirement perspective, and just for our own peace of mind. And then how we then interact with the cloud, on set, on premises, and making sure that flow of data is fluid, and yeah, no bottlenecks basically.
Sure. Now, we've been talking about working hybrid, working on set, that and security. So can you talk about some of the challenges, pain points? I know security's got to be one of them. How are you guys dealing with that challenge?
Yeah, there's definitely a balance to be drawn between the actual creative process and security. Our primary objective, I think, as systems engineers and technologists, is not to hinder the creative process. It's actually to obviously make it faster and more fluid. but by the same token, we have to be very conscious about, you know, a lot of the material that we create these days is sensitive. We don't want it to fall into the wrong hands or be leaked, or, you know, inadvertently somebody just goes, hey, I'm working on something really cool, and they want to show it to friends and family, but, you know, they can't do so. So we need to strike that balance, and I think we're making, you know, we've made very good progress with that, and a lot of the studios we work with are happy with the way in which Framestore has approached those problems, and so are artists.
Have you given your people any sort of, you know, have you dictated to them what they need to do, what they can't do in terms of?
Exactly. That's one of the big things that we've had to, you know, be mindful of, and speaking with studios and our customers, is that, you know, when we send our artists, you know, when they had to leave because of the pandemic, we had to explain to them that they couldn't, you know, be in an open room, and they had to be, you know, draw blinds and things like that for the windows, and making sure that family members don't inadvertently walk in and see what they're working on at any given point. So there's a lot of trust that we place on our staff, and, you know, we believe that they are more than capable of doing what we require of them. So yeah, at the moment it's a lot different to as it was, I guess, you know, 8 to 9 months ago. But, you know, I would like to say, knock on wood, that everything's going well, and we haven't had any situations, and we intend on not actually having any situations going forward either.
Right. Well, if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now, but it was back in March, would you do anything differently in terms of setting people up remotely?
I don't think so. I think we've been very lucky. Not, I wouldn't say lucky, actually. I think we've made a lot of correct decisions in the past, which has allowed us to be, or to get us to where we are now. And you know, as a company, we're still creating content, which is fantastic. People are still working, which is you know, brilliant in this situation when you hear all these kinds of horror stories out there. So no, I think we've done well, and hopefully everybody else has been able to do so as well.
So, Dave, I have a question about the concept of collaboration. You know, and video production studios and houses are always populated by artists who rely on each other for feedback and for ideas, and making a better product better by through collaboration. And in a lot of people's experience, the move to remote workflows has either limited or eliminated that concept of spontaneous collaboration or interaction. How has that been? How has that been at your facility and with your remote workers? And do you see that has affected your business at all?
From my understanding, it's a lot different. It's challenging. I think, you know, there's certain discipline that has come about from people working at home, as opposed to being in an office, and, you know, the potential for someone to tap you on the shoulder, or just, you know, do an impromptu sort of breakout and discussion about something. There's a lot of tools that obviously are available to us that we have, you know, technical tools, you know, instant messaging and video conferencing, and, you know, screen sharing for as such. So it's just a different world, really. I don't think it's hindered the creative process. It may elongate it, or perhaps even shorten it. You know, it's hard to tell. I think, you know, as most people have sort of said, this pandemic has kind of become a giant experiment to some degree, to see how it, you know, people working from home and, you know, outside of an office actually works. And although it's, you know, we're still getting content out there, we're delivering stuff, and we're doing what we need to. I still think the human touch is something that we are missing, and I think, you know, hopefully we can get back to some semblance of normality in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to ask this question, which is, what is normal going forward? Now that people have gotten a taste of maybe not an hour commute or more, if they've gotten a taste of being able to work closer to home, how will this change going forward, if at all? Do you see sort of a hybrid model?
I think most people will hedge their bets and say a hybrid model. I think, you know, our staff are saying things that they want to work from home and not do those commutes potentially. But then again, there are, you know, things and events and such that where they'll need to converge on a, you know, an office, for example. So we'll see what happens. Like I say, my crystal ball is slightly cloudy. It's not been particularly good in the past. Otherwise, I would have been, putting loads of money on the stock market in March. But anyway, I didn't do that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I hope we don't lose the personal, the human touch, because I think that's how our industry has been so productive and done wonderful things in the past 30, 40 years, such as Framestore has.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you both for joining us today. Thanks for the conversation, and touch base with you guys again soon.